Hello, ladies and gentlemen. How are you doing? My name is Alan Delozier. I'm the University Archivist here at Seton Hall University, and it is our pleasure to take you on a historical tour of our wonderful institution here in South Orange. It's a long and wonderful story, which actually had its start in Madison, New Jersey, when the school was founded in 1856 and moved to its present site here in South Orange in 1860. And as you can see around me, the school has grown immensely over the last 150 plus years. This particular angle, you get a good shot of the campus and how it has evolved from the older buildings, President's Hall, the chapel, Mooney Hall, and other structures on campus, to all the wonderful places that are here today, such as the Student Center, Boland Hall, dormitory space, the Recreation Center, and all that. So it's our pleasure to take you on a very extensive tour of places you may know on campus, but also places that you may not have known existed within the interiors of our college. So we welcome you to join us, and I hope you enjoy the historical tour of Seton Hall University. Welcome to President's Hall at Seton Hall University. This building was constructed in 1870 as a response to the new wave of Seton Hall students, faculty, and administrators who were coming to campus from South Orange. This particular structure first served as the seminary building for the college and has undergone a lot of renovations and restorations since, but they tried to capture the original 19th century feel of this particular lobby. As you look around this particular space, you'll see a lot of excellent woodwork, various tilings on the ceilings, and various other indications that this was a very educated and spiritual place in terms of what the administration was trying to do for the Seton Hall community back in the day, which lasts to this present time. This particular structure houses a president's office, the office of the provost, and various other administrators who make this campus run on an everyday basis. And historically speaking, there's a lot of symbolism in this space as well. As you look around, again, you'll see various spiritual aspects. The stained glass windows in the back represent three of the most particularly important figures within Seton Hall's history. On the left is St. Joseph, who was one of the early patron saints of the college back in the 19th and early 20th century. In the middle is the Blessed Virgin Mary, who again, symbolic of the school, was actually featured in our very first school seal back in 1864 when it was created. And off to the right is our patroness, St. Elizabeth Ann Seton, who we're named after. Mother Seton, her nephew was Bishop James Roosevelt Daly, who was the first bishop of Newark, and he's the one who founded Seton Hall University. And from there, we've honored her, and she attained canonization in 1975. So these three windows represent three of the most important spiritual figures in the life and history of Seton Hall. And as you look around and as you visit yourself down the road, you'll see a lot of images, a lot of paintings of various former presidents. Going back to our very first one, Reverend Bernard McQuaid, up until our present one, Dr. Joseph Nyer. So you'll see a lot of symbolism again in this particular space, and it's a space that's really historical, but it's also some place that's warm and welcoming to anybody who's looking at the history of Seton Hall from the starting point onward. Okay, welcome to Marshall Hall. Marshall Hall was built in 1897 and is the very first formal library in the history of Seton Hall. It was named after William Marshall, the Reverend William Marshall, who was one of our presidents during the late 19th century. And at one time, when this was functioning as a library from the 1890s until the mid-1950s, at first it had about 2,000 to 3,000 volumes in this very room, but it grew over time. Now you'll notice that the beauty of this room, just like President's Hall and their lobby, woodwork and various other facets that really made it welcoming and very formal in terms of its appearance and also its usage factor. And you'll notice this wonderful fireplace over here to keep the students and faculty warm during their studies. And the interesting parts about this fireplace in particular that make it unique to Seton Hall, of course, is the middle round bust or cameo of Mother Seton, who her influence has been here since the earliest days going forward. And with Mother Seton, if you notice really closely, if you look at the fireplace, you'll notice the initials SH, of course, Seton Hall. So they wanted to make an identifier within the fireplace, but also They put the stamp of identity on it historically in terms of the usage, the various volumes that have been purchased by the university, used by students, faculty, administrators, and the general public for years, that are now housed in the Walsh Library and throughout the university library system. So we can thank our pioneers in terms of looking at the vision of having a functioning library that has grown over time, but this is where it all started, and we're thankful for that. Welcome to the Science Building on Seton Hall University's campus. It was originally known as McNulty Hall, which was named in honor of John McNulty, Monsignor McNulty, who was the president during the 1950s. And he was a visionary in terms of scientific exploration, in terms of academic life, along with natural sciences. And this particular building was built in the mid-1950s. And one of the most important features that they kept after doing an extensive renovation in the 2000s was the atom wall right here, which I'm glad they preserved, because it speaks a lot to 1950s scientific inquiry, but also it speaks to the science student and even any type of student of today in terms of its symbolism, looking to the future, and learning about this particular subject area, which is very important for society and civilization on the whole. So Seton Hall's science tradition, as embodied in the atom wall and the science program and the science building, are an important part of Seton Hall University's history. Welcome to Stafford Hall. This is one of the cornerstone buildings of Seton Hall and its early history, especially from an architectural standpoint. As you can see here, the brownstone building looks really formidable, but what it does is it's the actual classroom space for the university. It's a very prime location for a number of different courses throughout the university, and various subject matters are taught in here. But it does have a great history as well. Going back to 1860, this was the site of the original college building. The college building, for its time immemorial, has been classroom space for a number of Seton Hall students over the years. And unfortunately, within its history, there have been a number of fires, one in 1866, one 20 years later, and then one in 1909 that destroyed the external and the infrastructure. But due to the strength of the administrators, patrons, and others in the community, they rebuilt time and time again. And what you see here is a monument to the remarkable history of the college building. Inside, you'll see the original cornerstone from the Stafford Hall of 1860. And also, I should point out, it was named after John Stafford, one of our longest serving presidents during the early to mid 20th century. So Stafford Hall, again, another historical landmark here on the Seton Hall landscape here on campus. Welcome to the foyer of the Immaculate Conception Seminary here in Lewis Hall. This particular structure was built in 1982 and houses the seminarians and the wonderful faculty who teach here in the School of Theology. The seminary on campus has had a long and proud tradition going back to the start of the school in the 1850s. Basically, liberal arts education, and especially education within the religious studies and philosophy fields, were very important. The seminary was located on campus for a number of years, up until the 1920s, when the campus moved to northern New Jersey at a place called Darlington, which is located inside the township of Mahwah. And then by the 1980s, the seminary had moved its operations back to the South Orange campus, where they remain to this present day. Even though it's had a long and interesting journey, the Immaculate Conception Seminary is one of the bedrocks, one of the important parts of the history of Seton Hall University. Okay, you're seeing a part of Seton Hall's campus that many people are not aware of or don't see regularly. Usually this part of the campus, which is the back of the chapel, President's Hall, and Stafford Hall, definitely represent the logo and motto of Seton Hall, which is heart, mind, and spirit. And essentially, these particular buildings, you can get a good sense of the architectural history and meaning of them. Brownstone, the chapel being Gothic Revival in terms of its architectural status. President's Hall, the exterior, which is built in, I'd say, collegiate Gothic from the 19th century, where a lot of buildings were made for not only aesthetics, but also for inspiring learning and also the administrative aspect. Now, Stafford Hall, we mentioned a little bit about the learning or the classroom space for early Seton Hall and going forward to the present day. That's the beauty of the history of Seton Hall. The history is celebrated and the continuum goes forward. So if you're ever on campus and you want to look into this courtyard, it's very important. And one of the major focal points that a lot of people also don't see, but is significant no less, is the big tree right here in the center, which has been here as long as the college and even beforehand, showing a great continuum of nature and how it represents Seton Hall's growth over time. And if you want a view of the courtyard at any point, if you go between the chapel and President's Hall, there's a nice gate. You can look in and get a great sense of this particular area, but also this other structure right in front of me. This is Alumni Hall, which was built in 1883. By the 1880s, Seton Hall had a fairly sizable alumni base growing over time. Every year there were a few hundred graduates which built up in terms of the Seton Hall experience, and those who supported it after commencement, after graduation, and earning their diplomas. Alumni Hall was important not only as an alumni space for meetings, but also over time it had various functions. Most interestingly, it was served as a basketball court, gymnasium, but later a chemistry lab for the natural sciences. And now it is home, the back end of the Immaculate Conception Seminary, and it serves as a chapel. So lots of usage, lots of utility, and this represents another historical milestone in Seton Hall's architectural history. Welcome to historical Walsh Gymnasium. The athletic history of Seton Hall goes hand in hand with the academic history of this institution. The Seton Hall athletic tradition goes back several years to the 1860s when we fielded a baseball team. And over the years, we've had a lot of signature sports, a lot of victories, a lot of success in our particular games with other institutions of higher education. Now, you'll notice that we are the Pirates, and you'll see in the background a number of indications and icons of the pirate. Let me tell you a little bit about how we got our present nickname. Prior to this time, back in the 1900s, 1910s, 20s, we were known as the White and Blue or the Villagers. Then in 1931, April of that year, we played a baseball game with Holy Cross College up in Worcester, Massachusetts. Apparently, the local Newark sports writers were very impressed by the aggressiveness of the Seton Hall baseball team on that day, and they called them a bunch of pirates. Instead of being derogatory, the Seton Hall athletes and the administration embraced this particular nickname, and we've had it to the present day. So you'll see a lot of pirate iconography, not only here in Walsh Gymnasium, but throughout campus. And speaking of the Walsh Auditorium here, indoor sports, very important. Women's basketball, men's basketball, volleyball, other activities of note. And of course, basketball being one of our most popular sports here on campus, a lot of success and a lot of great times and memories, which are also included in the history of Seton Hall's overall historical story. Welcome to the foyer of the Walsh Gymnasium here on the campus of Seton Hall University. This is a very historical space within a very historical building. Walsh Gymnasium was built in 1939 and it was dubbed at the time the $1 Million Gym because its expense was very key in terms of what Monsignor James Kelly, who the president at the time, was trying to do in terms of blending both academic excellence with athletic excellence. And in the early 1940s, after this structure was built, is indicative of that time and the success that was had by Seton Hall athletics, which lasts to the present day. And speaking of the 1940s, Seton Hall was really keen in terms of putting together wonderful teams that were nationally known. Essentially, the men's basketball team made its very first postseason appearance within the National Invitational Tournament, which during the 1940s was one of the premier, if not the premier, college basketball tournament in the country. And also, our very first All-American, Bob Davies, played on that team, which was known as the Wonder Five under the tutelage of Coach John Honey Russell. All Hall of Famers, all successful. But one of the hidden gems of our athletic story is our fencing team. The men's fencing team had an undefeated streak for 3 years from the late 1930s to the early 1940s. And we actually won the national championship of all colleges in 1939-1940, being Seton Hall's only officially recognized national championships to date. But we're hopeful of more in the future. In terms of the history of this particular space, lots of fans of Seton Hall athletics have been through this particular area over the years, and several thousand people have stories and memories of this particular place. And in terms of tangible memories, there's two wonderful murals on the walls highlighting that trailblazing time, the early 1940s. Giacomo Rago, who was an artist of note within Newark during the early 1940s, painted 2 murals, one for the fencing team, which were the national champions, as mentioned, and also of the Wonder Five, which was one of the premier early basketball teams in the history of Setonia. So this particular space is not only historically tremendous, but it's also aesthetically important for future generations to see where the historical traditions of the athletic department took off from. And it's a really great space, and also another story within the Seton Hall University story. This is Mooney Hall. Mooney Hall was the original home to Seton Hall Preparatory School. The prep school has a proud tradition within the story of the overall of Seton Hall University. Back in the 19th century, Seton Hall College, as it was originally known, had a 7-year curriculum, which included a prep school, college division, and then later graduate studies. With that said, the prep school was here on the South Orange campus until 1985, and the prep division was connected to the college until 1897. So these dates are very important because Mooney Hall was the primary place, the primary location for classes dealing with the high school division of Seton Hall over the years until the 1980s. Right now you'll see within this particular structure the Army ROTC, various classrooms, and also freshman studies and other important offices on campus which help the student population. It does have a great continuum in the overall story of Seton Hall's history. I'm standing before you now on the balcony of Jubilee Hall, one of our newest buildings on campus, built in 1997. Actually, this particular site has a great significance in the history of Seton Hall. This was the site of the second library building, McLaughlin Library, named after Thomas McLaughlin, one of our early illustrious alumni. And the library functioned until the 1990s, when it was superseded by WALSH Library, which was built in 1994. And this particular view gives a great panorama of the campus around you. You get a good sense of the University Green, which is very significant and very special to a number of Seton Hall individuals who have either studied on this particular patch of green, played there, or made friendships that last a lifetime. The statue of Mother Seton, the seal of the campus, and as you look into the horizon, you see the spire of Mooney Hall, and also President's Hall off to my extreme right. So all these particular sites are very invaluable in terms of the history of Seton Hall. Thank you for joining us here today. I just want to give proper acknowledgement to my wonderful colleague, Professor Brian Meadows, who created this tour and really put a lot of heart and soul into it. It's my pleasure to collaborate with him. And hopefully you, ladies and gentlemen, enjoyed this particular history tour of the campus. And we look forward to seeing you very soon here on campus to explore more of the treasures we have here on the South Orange campus of Seton Hall University. Hazards at Forward.